Welcome back to our final plenary session of the conference, and dragging out perhaps a little bit the expedition metaphor that I established this morning. I always say that the best way to get to know people very well, very quickly, is to spend a few days in a tent with them. So I hope today has had a similar effect in that during the workshops and the exercises, you've got to know your fellow delegates and made some connections and maybe met some new contacts that will prove to be really valuable to you in the future. But as we pointed out this morning, unfortunately you couldn't be everywhere at once and do all the workshops. So in order to help you, we had our wonderful roving reporters moving between all the different sessions. And so if I could invite the roving reporters up onto stage, we'll just do a bit of a summary of the key points that we got from the different sessions. But in order to give you a little bit of an initial overview and a rundown on the key points, I'd like to invite Joette to kick off. In case any of you didn't get to meet Joette today, who was running the Ideas Factory, Joette spent several years in senior management and CEO roles and now concentrates on positive psychology, which I think is fantastic, in neuroscience, looking at leadership development in leading multinational NGOs. And so if Joette would like to sort of kick off with some key points that you got from the Ideas Factory today, and we'll move on from there.
Start off by being a bit more humble, actually. I've worked with Shared Care since about 2004 and do a lot of work with carers organisations, which is really what brings me here. So I had a great time listening to people's ideas, fresh ideas for the future of short breaks. The resounding call is for better use of social media, particularly some sort of TripAdvisor site where there are photographs, where people are rating accessibility and hospitality, and people are able to learn from one another. More opportunities for breaks in rural settings, consistency of break opportunities across Scotland, so getting away from a postcode lottery where some people have lots of opportunities and some people have none. The idea of using natural friendship groups, and a number of times it was mentioned that by pooling budgets and sharing support, people are able to get more. The opportunity for parents and families to support one another, and one of the comments related to this was that we need to remove barriers of people needing to be registered or agency approved. And stuff that we know already, of course, about involving children, young people and families from the start, offering choices, communicating not only about opportunities and options that are available, but for agencies to be communicating between themselves so that care plans are shared and you don't have to do, find out everything every time. And finally, that there are confident, positive staff who respect that a person with a disability is a person.
Okay, brilliant. Well, all of our roving reporters have been in all sorts of different sessions today, but I'd just like to sort of kick off by asking if each of you could just talk us through a key point that's really struck you, perhaps a common message that you heard again and again in lots of the different sessions. So if we start at the end with Caroline.
I think the thing that came out in all the different sessions, well, the two sessions, was that people were the messages that people were saying were really, really simple. People were saying, you just need to be positive and, being positive and look for the possibilities. And you need to ask people and you need to put people, in their centre and you need to find out what people want. And I'm new to this and I'm thinking, is that not obvious? But obviously it's not obvious. And I think that's a really, really interesting and a positive thing that's happening. And so there were two different quotes that came from the two workshops. One was, it was from the self-directed support workshop, and their family had said, actually, it was the first time someone had actually looked at my son as a person. That was the first time someone had actually asked us and worked with us in a positive way. And then in the evaluation workshop, someone had said she was running a course, and then at the end, their parents had said, thank you very much, that was the first time anyone had ever asked us, what we wanted. And those two really, really struck out. It's that's what's coming through loud and clear, is with short breaks, is putting people at their centre, and that's what people were saying was good.
Thanks. Tracy?
My two things that came out was sharing information, and I think Joette mentioned that, between families on what facilities are good for disabled families and what works. So it would be quite nice for us all to go in and say, I went there, it was great, and someone else, and I went there, it was bad, and for someone else to be able to say, we'll go there, rather than the other one. And the other topic was working together. It's getting all the different groups of people joining up with the child and the family to solve a problem, rather than a group trying to solve a problem without involving everyone. So that's mine too.
I think, obviously, I agree with everything that's been said here, but for me, there seems to be quite a lot around what people are expecting from self-directed support. There'll be much more opportunity for families to have their say, and I know that self-directed support is already available, but with the Act, I think this has generated a lot more interest in having the families decide what support they can get from everyone.
Harriet.
Okay, well, I think it's been a fantastic day, and I've just learnt so much, so I've got more than 2 ideas, but I will try and contain myself. I think one of the real interesting things to me was the difference it made when you shift control. You shift control over to the families and the parents and the children. And how, with Mudward Project, I learned that when that happened, actually families didn't need all the support they'd been allocated. It was knowing when they could have the support, how they could have the support, and who would deliver it, helped to sustain them. And I think, secondly, I think the other big message has to be that, I suppose, service providers or authorities and the government have to make a strong link and understand the importance of the link between prevention and these services, and how these services, if they get there early enough, and if they can be given to families, so families can get the resources to develop the services and supports they want, that actually that can sustain families and sustain relationships into adulthood which otherwise might break down.
It's funny, Harriet, actually, because the Ideas Factory session I sat in on, that was a message that came out loud and clear, was that the idea of almost rebranding respite and short breaks, so that it wasn't something that you needed in extremis, it was something that you automatically put in almost as a prevention to stop a cycle of behaviour. And there are several discussions that I heard this idea of reselling and rebranding, repositioning short breaks coming up again and again. Was there anything, in fact, Tracy, I'll direct this to you, was there anything that you heard today that really surprised you? So I'm really surprised to hear that sort of argument coming through, or that message coming through.
I think most of it, because we've been there on our journey, we've heard a lot of it, but we have different issues to a lot of the families. So something that we find, actually having a disabled child, which is quite easy, we actually find travelling reasonably easy, because Louis quite happily sits in the car and we just go. But a couple of the families I heard today, sometimes they don't get half an hour and there's a whole issue, because the child doesn't like travelling, or something happens during the transport, and then there's the whole issue with actually getting on the break, let alone having the break. So I think that for us, it's also a very strong message that not every family is the same, because I certainly don't experience those difficulties. We have other difficulties. So it's there's just such a huge scope of things that can potentially go wrong on a break, but it's also trying to get over that and having an action plan, and then an action plan to get past that action plan if that one doesn't work. So.
And how about for you, Geeta, coming from a sort of policy background? Was there anything that you heard today that you thought, I wasn't really expecting to hear that message coming through today?
Well, not such a expecting to hear. I think I just heard something from a different perspective. I mean, I've always known that there's a problem with transitions from child to adult services, but I mean, someone said, well, we're expecting a child to become an adult overnight. And, I hadn't really thought about it from the child's perspective. I thought about it from the transition in services and what can be expected, but not on the effect that would have on the child. And there was a lady there that was providing adult services, and she said, I've got an 18-year-old coming to me and I'm trying to put them into a service that could equally be for a 35-year-old or a 45-year-old. And that sort of brought it home to me.
And Joette, you've seen lots of people come through the Ideas Factory today. There was a lot of buzz up there in the Ideas Cafe. And what was your sort of overwhelming feeling as those sessions came to an end?
I think that almost none of the discussion was about money or resources. It was about flexibility, creativity, being child and family, young person centered from the beginning, letting people use their creativity and ideas, not necessarily needing more money. And I think that's an important thing for local authority and government to be aware that there's a lot of energy and idea and desire out there to make things work.
Brilliant. Well, that seems like a fantastic message to end on. And all those ideas that came out of the Ideas Factory, I believe, are still up on the wall in the Ideas.
They've come down.
Oh,
But they're in safe hands.
brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much for spending your morning and afternoon gathering all those ideas together and reporting back for us. But just before you leave the stage, I think Harriet's going to finish up with a bit of a challenge for all of us.
Well, folks, at this time of the day, people are thinking about the end of the conference, but I don't want you to think about the end, because actually we've had such a fantastic day, lots and lots of ideas. Some of them are in safe hands, going back to Shared Care Scotland, some of them are in your heads. And we've talked about the journey from the beginning, and I want you to take this journey a little bit further than today. And to help you, you've all got in your packs a postcard. And the idea here is for you to write to yourself about the next steps you're going to take on your journey to make it better, to make Scotland a better place for disabled children. Now, this doesn't have to be about building a castle or whatever. It can be just the next steps, however big or however manageable you want them to be. But just jot a few things down with your name and address, and my understanding is they'll be collected at the end and they'll be sent to you as a wee reminder of, and I suppose hopefully as a wee sort of pat on the back, because in 3 months' time, no doubt you'll have taken those steps and you'll have got there. So if I can ask you to do that, I'd be very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to our roving reporters.